What is freedom? Dear friends, in every human being, there is a longing for freedom. But what does it mean to be free? According to some, freedom is something that you feel when you race through a sunlit countryside on a motorcycle, or when you have just passed an examination, or when your youngest child is finally going to school, or maybe when you live to be 65 with the prospect of a good pension. But these are nothing more than feelings that are aroused for a shorter or longer period of time because we were freed from something that was holding us back. So how can we really be free? Actually, for people who suffer from war, illness, or sorrow, to be free is a great asset. For them, the concept of freedom is very clear and concrete. However, those who don't fall into one of these categories can also experience an intense craving for freedom. The question is, what kind of freedom do we have in mind? We could, of course, simply define freedom as doing what we like. In this sense, everybody is searching for freedom. We see how everywhere people are trying to rise above the gray masses by aspiring to be rich, powerful, or famous. All prefer the agreeable to the disagreeable, the sweet to the bitter, and so on. But in many seekers, even when they have many choices in front of them, the gnawing feeling of a fundamental lack of freedom remains. And this is not so much a matter of not being able to do the things they want to do, but rather a matter of experiencing their own limits and those of the world as an imprisonment. They are aware that there must be more to life, and they aspire to break through the limitations of their own being, no matter how. In them, there is a longing for a higher, limitless, and lasting reality. And the more the prospect of such a reality becomes stronger, yes, that this reality could even exist within him, the greater the feeling of bondage and imprisonment. The fact is that the intellect cannot comprehend this reality, and it cannot be realized by means of our will. And this is not because the intellect is not shrewd enough, or the will too weak, but because there are fundamental impediments that prevent us from penetrating into a higher world with such absolute values as freedom, love, and unity. In the first place, there is the notion of a love that is beyond all. It is the love that includes everything and everyone, and that remains connected with each being. It is a love that is not compelling, because each human being, as an originally divine creature, as a child of God, should follow his or her path of life in complete freedom and self-responsibility. Of their own free will, they merge with the unity in which all separation is absent. If now, with this in mind, we consider our present situation, we can conclude that this intended freedom is far from us. Why? Take, for instance, the way in which the concept of free expression of opinion is being used in society? How often are the minds of people inflamed as a result of this freedom? How often does the freedom that people are permitting themselves mean lack of freedom for others? The freedom someone chooses leads to a constraint and imprisonment for others in a self-woven net. Until one discovers that freedom must be chosen in relation to the true purpose of life. In all universal teachings, we are told that a spiritual nucleus is imprisoned in a material outer covering, in a nature-born human being like you or I. And because of our material orientation, we continuously ignore the impulses coming from this divine principle, whether intentionally or not. An increasing number of people experience these impulses as disquieting. They are reflected in a vague yearning or craving for freedom. It is a process during which the nature-born person tries to achieve what he or she experiences as an inner urge by exerting all their strength. And the more they strive, the more the realization of their lack of freedom will grow. And ultimately, this can lead to the feeling, as described in chapter 20 of the Tao Te Ching, the multitude rejoice and are glad. I am like a newborn babe who has not yet smiled. In the heart of such people, the original seed of freedom, confined in its jail, is awaiting the moment that the door can be opened. So we see two beings that are contained in one microcosm we call man. Two creatures that are keeping each other captive in a fixed hold, a catch-22, as it were. On the one hand, the nature-born person, who, due to the call from the spiritual principle in the heart, experiences the prison walls of his space and time existence, right into his very blood. And on the other hand, there is that spiritual nucleus, unable to manifest itself as long as it is the nature-born person who is continually trying to get a grip on the impulses from this spiritual principle. They are like two prisoners who are each other's prison guard, two souls in one microcosm condemned to coexist. When we consider the situation clearly in our mind, the solution might seem pretty simple. For isn't it so that we could individually here and now just decide to adopt the way of life that is necessary to set this divine element free? Yes, we could, indeed. But are we really able to do so? For with our sheer willpower, we wouldn't get anywhere. Our will is just as limited and imprisoned as the rest of our existence. This is something we may have already experienced. There is, by the way, something remarkable going on with respect to our will. Brain experts have established through selective experiments that now and then, even seconds before the persons under study have made up their minds as to which choice to make, the choice was already detectable on a brain scan. Well, the discussion about the exact interpretation of this finding will certainly continue for many years to come. But it is quite clear that something is wrong with our concept of a will that takes the initiative and determines what we choose. Apparently, our choices are made in some other way, a way which simply is beyond our grasp. Thanks to the universal teachings, we may be familiar with the concept of karma. If you want to know more about this subject, we recommend you to watch our video talk, Beyond Karma. In the universal teachings, it is mentioned that man as a microcosm is subject to the higher laws of cause and effect. During each incarnation, past experiences put their mark on the human being and lead him through a multitude of new experiences. The possibilities of determining our own fate are very limited. One way or the other, the most important events and experiences are in principle predetermined, regardless of the important choices we supposedly make with our will. They originate from a kind of magnetic field which we call astral. The word astral indicates that it has something to do with the stars. It also indicates that the positioning of the stars and the planets in certain ways are related to the course of our fate. It is the zodiac of the astrologers. From all this, we may conclude that our ego, that is our I consciousness, with its faculties of thinking and willing, should rather be regarded as an instrument equipped to receive and put into action the powers of an astral field. So that is completely different from our usual idea that our mind is the driving and controlling principle of our life. It is therefore in the nature of those who experience the craving for freedom intensively to, as yet, conquer control over their own lives with the help of a whole array of techniques. This is usually done through concentration exercises, whether or not supported by the use of ancient magical methods where the astral field is manipulated in a direct way. And of course, there's also the time-honored knowledge of astrology, used to try and dodge the strokes of fate and to collect the full profit of favorable moments. We, in the Golden Rosy Cross, are of the opinion that even if in this way we would succeed in influencing our fate, it will still not lead to the liberating deed that is necessary to break through the impasse that prevails in the twofold system called man. For it is a fact that the nature-born personality is not capable of going beyond the field from which it originated. It is tightly attached to the web of fate, and it appears that the more vehemently it resists, the more it becomes entangled in the web. So we still haven't got an answer to the question, how do we reach freedom? How can we rise above the astral laws that keep the personality in captivity and thus prevent the manifestation of true freedom in it? How can we totally break loose from the wheel of birth and death so that as originally divine beings, we break through to a reality beyond the prison of our senses? This question has only one answer, which has throughout the ages been given to humanity in many different ways. And today we would like to formulate it as follows. The key to the path of liberation is that the personality makes itself totally subordinate to the consciousness impulses coming from the rose of the heart, from that spiritual principle, that nucleus of the divine being in each human being. It is through this nucleus, this spiritual principle, that the connection can be made with a totally different astral field, a field of gnosis, of true knowledge, a field of unity, freedom, and love. To realize this new inner orientation and to get in touch with the life of the spiritual spark requires a fundamental choice, an inner act that turns the world upside down without the use of even an ounce of muscular strength. This choice is not to be made by applying the will, but by surrendering the will. Just think of the Lord's Prayer, where it is said, "Thy will be done." Liberation cannot be conquered by holding tight, but by letting go. And the choice of such a totally different attitude to life does not originate from the personality's own will, but from a new Gnostic capacity of consciousness that springs from the activated divine principle. This leads us to soul experience, to inner stillness. Such a person has arrived at a point of reversal, at a total 0 point, when the head is silent and the heart can open up to the love power that comes to us from a higher field of life, from another dimension of life. Only in this way we can set our feet on the path of liberation. It means living a joyful life of deeds in this world, while freeing ourselves from the shackles of egocentric existence. It is truly being. It is a path leading to true freedom, not for our ego, which in fact is our jailer, but for the inner divine being that urges us and guides us on this path to the higher dimensions of divinity. It does not mean running away from the world, but living our daily life in a totally different paradigm, the paradigm of being and love. We may wish to explore these and other questions in our follow-up sessions. Hope to see you then. Thank you.